I would have to say my favorite protein, hands down, I think it would be peanut butter. I adore peanut butter.
You do eat a lot of peanut butter.
Welcome to the Complete Nutrition Podcast.
The podcast where we break free from the dieting cycle and explore sustainable, realistic ways to improve your health.
I'm Kylie, a registered dietitian with over 10 years of experience.
And I'm Spencer, and I've been eating food my entire life. And I happen to be a nurse.
Each week, we dive into the science, psychology, and strategies behind mindful eating and sustainable change.
Whether you're here to transform your relationship with food, learn how to make lasting lifestyle changes, or are simply curious about what true health looks like, you're in the right place.
We invite you to subscribe and tag along if you'd like to stop dieting and start living.
Did you know that we can photosynthesize? This episode is brought to you by the vitamin D. The vitamin that you could say that we kind of photosynthesize. The UV rays of sunlight cause a change in the shape of a protein in our skin that eventually becomes vitamin D. So vitamin D was first discovered by medical missionaries in the 1800s in China that discovered a correlation between healing the rickets bone disease in children by putting them in sunlight. And rickets bone disease, just so you know, is characterized by bow legs due to the softening of bones, which is really terrible. Then later in the 1900s, lots of clinical trials found what we now call vitamin D, and that sunlight helped synthesize vitamin D in our skin. They also discovered it in a few food groups. Vitamin D is important for bone health. They've also found that it helps some mood disorders and that it can help with energy levels as well. So if you're living a long ways from the equator, for those in like the northern and far southern hemispheres, if you feel a little bit low on energy, it could be because you have a lower vitamin D deficiency or a lower vitamin D level. And if you're feeling a little bit sad or low energy, you might as well go get it checked. It might help. Something as simple as eating some mushrooms could help heal your mood a little bit.
And I actually had a vitamin D deficiency that was diagnosed in the springtime. And when I started taking vitamin D, I did feel like it helped my mood and helped give me a little bit more energy. And we live in Utah, and I see vitamin D deficiencies all the time. So pretty cool vitamin that we can make from sunlight. And it's also found in fungi and liver and egg yolks. Odd enough. So, all right. Well, okay, Spencer, do you feel like protein is on a pedestal? I just feel like so many people feel like protein is the most important nutrient out there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like a lot of people talk a lot about protein because they want to be buff or they want to be super fit all the time. So yeah, it's definitely on a pedestal. Like there's like the carnivore diet and stuff that people talk about, and that's like kind of all over Instagram. So yeah, I'd say it's like pretty high on a pedestal.
Well, and I feel like from like a fear of food perspective, a lot of people fear carbohydrates and a lot of people fear fats. But I don't feel like there's any of that same fear around protein. Protein is well accepted. We have protein bars. We have protein drinks. And I feel like
you can take just pure protein powder. That's true.
Yeah.
And we don't have like fat powder or anything like that. That's true.
That everyone is trying to get more protein. And it almost seems like there's this health halo around protein, that if you are consuming higher protein sources or focusing on protein, that means that you are healthy or you're healthier because you're doing that.
Which is funny because it wasn't until I was a nurse and learned about how excess protein, which I think we're going to talk about this, can hurt your kidneys, that I didn't even know that you could like have too much protein. So I didn't even know that was a thing.
I just think it's really interesting how over the years, I don't know, there's definitely at least in the US, this shift of stronger emotions, negative or positive emotions around different nutrients. And I definitely feel like protein, there's a lot of positive vibes around protein and negative vibes around carbohydrates and fat. And I mean, even jumping into some protein myth that I hear a lot of or get questioned, eating more protein helps you to gain more muscle, or eating more protein makes you healthier, or eating more protein is better for blood sugars, or eating more protein helps you to lose weight. And we're going to jump into some of those and talk about what protein is, why it's important, and in future episodes, we will also talk about carbohydrates and fats that are equally important. And hopefully after today, we can put also carbohydrates and fat on the pedestal with protein because like we learned about in our last episode, we do need that balance.
We need everything. Okay, so what even is protein? What is protein?
I mean, from a chemical, I don't know if you'd call it chemical perspective. So protein is made up of a bunch of building blocks known as amino acids. And there are dozens of different types of amino acids, but we have amino acids that we can make and we can synthesize ourselves. And there are only 9, we call them essential amino acids because we cannot make them, our body cannot synthesize them ourselves. And so we need to consume them in our diet. And not that this matters, but histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. The other one that I am super familiar with is tryptophan. Tryptophan is the amino acid that's in turkey that supposedly makes you sleepy. Have you heard that before? Yeah. Anyways, those are the amino acids that are essential that we need to consume in our diet.
Isn't phenylalanine the one that a lot of people, it's like a dietary restriction?
And for PKU.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is also interesting. So what do those people do if they can't have that essential amino acid?
Yeah. So for people with PKU, they have to be super strict with their diet. Because it could actually damage your cognitive functioning. Whoa. And so there's very strict dietary restrictions, but the bulk of their nutrition comes from a formula that doesn't have that amino acid in it.
Whoa.
Yeah. So in my work as a NICU dietitian, all babies are tested for that because it's a congenital condition and it will impact their development. And so, yeah.
All right.
Anyways, but sources of protein, and hopefully I think for most people this is a review, but sources of protein are going to be in most animal products. So all of your meats, your eggs, like dairy products like milk and yogurt, but also in plants. So, beans and legumes and nuts and seeds all have a higher protein source. And, well, what's your favorite source of protein?
My favorite source of protein?
Yeah.
Okay. So growing up, my family ate a lot of meat. We were definitely meat roast beef people.
Spencer's from a small town. Not that that changes anything, but
yeah.
I lived in a small town, and I feel like it was a rural
yours is
community.
Relatively small. Yours is huge. To me.
No. When I lived in Idaho, it was a small town.
That is weird. That's true.
But I feel like in more rural communities, it's definitely meat and potato stock eating.
That is interesting. I think, it kind of seems like that. My town was hunter central, so everybody was eating venison all the time, literally except for my family, it felt like. So we ate a lot of beef, and I would have said beef back in the day, but now my favorite source of protein is honestly, I would say I really like eating quinoa because I know it's a full protein or whatever, right?
Well, and we can talk about that. But would you really say quinoa is your favorite?
It's not my favorite flavored one. I think my favorite source of protein is probably chickpeas because you can make it into hummus.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Chickpeas and...
For you. Okay.
This is a terrible question. I should know this. Do lentils have protein?
Yeah, lentils would be considered in that legume group, right?
Yeah, okay.
So all types of beans, the lentils.
I really like lentils.
Split peas, edamame. Yeah, those are all types of plant protein.
Salted edamame is also fun. But yeah, I'd say, okay, so final answer, I'd say chicken. Chicken and...
Okay, Spencer just said quinoa, and then all the plant protein, and now we're back to chicken.
Yeah. Chicken is good. I love chicken. Chicken and, wow, I just forgot the name of the nut, or the legume that we were just talking about. We should edit this part out.
Lentils?
Lentils.
Okay.
My favorite protein, final answer is chicken and lentils.
Okay, chicken and lentils. I would have to say my favorite protein, hands down, I think it would be peanut butter. I adore peanut butter.
You do eat a lot of peanut butter.
So definitely my favorite protein source. But let's talk about complete proteins. So with plant protein, because they do not contain all of the essential amino acids, it is so if you are following a more plant-based or a vegan or vegetarian diet, it is important to pair your plant proteins with a whole grain. So like brown rice and beans or lentils and quinoa, they don't need to be eaten at the same time, but as long as you're incorporating plant protein with whole grains, which I should, I guess, count. Whole grains also have a high protein source, but more of those legumes with the whole grain is considered a complete protein.
Because the whole wheats have, or the whole grains have protein in them, that like is what finishes the whole protein?
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yep. So legumes have part of those essential amino acids, and
I did not know that.
The whole grain does. Yeah, and it's actually really interesting if you go and look at the actual protein content of whole grains. Like wild rice has a really high, I want to say like 14 grams per half cup.
Whoa,
so
that is a
whole
lot.
Grains, yeah, it does have a quite a bit higher.
But it's not a full protein. You have to finish it with the legumes or something.
Right. So, but and when people hear that, then I think sometimes they hyper focus, and anytime they eat a legume or beans or lentils, they try and pair it with the whole grain. As long as you're eating, because meat is the other thing. Animal protein that is a complete protein. It has all of the amino acids. So if you are a meat eater, I wouldn't worry too much about that. But if you're vegan or vegetarian, making sure you're getting complete protein sources is important.
Yeah, pros and cons to both sources.
Right. And I would say too, so quinoa and soy are kind of cool plant foods because they do contain all 9 essential amino acids. So kind of fun.
That's cool. Yay for tofu. So what do we even need all this protein for?
Protein is super important. So, well, first off, it helps to give us energy. I mean, similar to carbs and fat. It also helps with building and repairing. So if you think about, all of the structures, everything our body's made up with, it's made with protein. And beyond that, it is also helping to transport oxygen. It makes up our red blood cells.
It's like the basic building blocks.
Yeah. It really is in all parts of us. And maybe that's attributes to it being on a pedestal. But hopefully after our next couple of episodes, you'll put carbohydrates and carbohydrates and fats up there too. Mm-hmm. And it also helps with digesting. Protein or the enzymes that help us to digest food are made up of protein. The protein is also makes up our hormones. So all of our different hormones that are
really all the chemical messengers.
Yeah, all the chemical messengers that are telling our body to do all of the things. Sometimes when I say hormones, people automatically think reproductive hormones. But we have hormones that are helping us to feel tired, helping us to feel hungry, helping us feel full. So all of these chemical messengers are made up of protein. And proteins also help us maintain our fluid balance. They keep our fluid where it needs to be in our cells. And when we see deficiencies or when we see conditions that impact our protein metabolism, we start to see edema or swelling because that fluid balance is off because our protein is off. And anyway, so protein is a lot, super interesting nutrient, and it is not only for building muscles.
Yeah. So not to be scary, you talked about fluid imbalance, but like if I were only eating, I don't know, just corn or something, or I just wasn't getting all 9 essential amino acids, I would get a fluid imbalance because there wasn't enough protein in my blood, correct? And then all the fluid would flow out of my blood vessels into the rest of my body.
Right. And that's one of the signs of a protein deficiency. If you, right. Do you remember, or maybe you've seen pictures of smaller children in developing nations that have like the really round bellies?
Yeah. What is that called again?
Yeah, that term, it's called kwashiorkor.
Yeah.
And it isn't a calorie deficiency, but it's a protein deficiency. So they're getting enough calories, but because they're
just eating rice or something.
Or whatever I would say around the world, right? Staples are mostly carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And so if they're not getting, where they're kids, and we'll talk about who needs more protein, but kids definitely fall under that group who need more protein because they're growing and they're building all the things for growth. So if kids aren't getting enough, so that protein deficiency is manifested, and a lot of their fluid has leaked out into their abdominal cavity, causing that swollen belly look. So that's part of what's happening.
Jeez. Very sad. Okay. So protein is important. Again, it's just as important as all the other groups of macronutrients.
Yeah, we're just talking about protein today.
Protein is what we're talking about.
So hopefully after our conversations about carbs and fats, you'll be convinced as well.
Yeah. So how much protein do we need? Like if I'm to prevent kwashiorkor, I suppose, how much protein do I need?
There is something called the acronym is AMDR, so Acceptable Macronutrient Distribution Ranges. And the Institute of Medicine took a whole bunch of different studies, and they created recommendations for the percentage of calories that we need from each of these macronutrient groups.
And that's what the AMDR is?
Mm-hmm. That's what the AMDR is, yep. So the percentage recommendation of our caloric intake that needs to be coming from each of these groups. Mm-hmm. So for protein, the recommendation is 10 to 35% of our calories ideally needs to be coming from protein.
So 10 to 35% of our calories need to come from protein. Mm-hmm. So if a plate, I guess, equals 100%, then like literally like a 10 to 35% section of that plate.
Yeah, I think that's an easy way to think of it.
Should be protein?
Yeah.
Okay, because it's just weird to think of calories coming from protein. Obviously, I don't understand calories enough.
Yeah, and so in episode 1, we talked about macronutrients. So macronutrients are all providing us calories. So we get calories from protein, carbohydrates, and fat. So of our total intake, 10 to 35% needs to be coming from protein. And I think that's a nice or easy way to think of it is 10 to 35% of your meals and your snacks. If you're getting from protein, then you're probably meeting your AMDR percentage needs.
Okay. All right.
Which in some people, this is another myth that I hear all the time, that take your weight and that is how many grams of protein you need. Which, have you heard that before?
Wait, so like if I take my weight, it's in kilograms, right?
No, I should specify. Take your weight in pounds, and that is the amount of
grams
of
per
protein
day.
you need per day.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah, again, like protein is on this pedestal. Push the protein. You need so much protein, and it is a lot. And so if you want the equations that have been studied and peer-reviewed, everyone grab their calculator out, and we'll do this together. So you take your weight or your estimated weight in pounds and divide that by 2.2. That's going to give you how much you weigh in kilograms. Write that down on a piece of paper. And then your the minimum amount that we need to function is we need 0.8 grams per kilogram. So you'll take, again, your pounds, the amount you weigh in pounds, divided by 2.2 to get your weight in kilograms. Mm-hmm. And now times that by 0.8. And that is the minimum amount of protein that you need in a day.
Okay.
And then people ask, well, okay, I'm working out, I'm trying to gain muscle mass, or maybe you are more active than the average individual. So the American College of Sports Medicine recommends 1.4 to 2 grams per kilogram. And so I have experience with working. I've worked in the ICU setting for the last 10 years. And rarely, if ever, for adults, does anyone need more than 2 grams per kilogram? Which if I did...
2 grams is still a lot.
It is a lot, but if you are in a source of anabolism where your body is needing it for growth or for healing, there are some cases that you need more protein. But I would say focus on like getting at least your minimum if you want to count grams. Not necessary.
So I would take my kilograms times 2 grams, right? Because it's 2 grams per kilogram. So yeah, times 2. So I would need, if I were to do 2 grams, I would need 145 grams of protein.
Which is interesting to note because that is less. So the maximum that I would ever recommend for you would be that 2, which I don't think that you need that, knowing like, your activity and your healthy.
That's like if I'm like healing from a wound or something,
right? Or if you're like a bodybuilder, or have like burns all over your body. But interesting to note that 2 grams per kilogram is still less than your grams per poundage.
Yeah. So
I would not follow that advice of your pounds, grams per pound.
You'll hurt your kidneys, maybe.
So let's talk about who is it that, because there are some people who do need that higher amount, so closer to that 1 to 1.5, maybe 2 grams per kilogram. So people who are active and trying to build muscle, and I would say there's this level, right? This spectrum. If you are maybe like a moderate active person where you work out a couple times a week, it's good to have an emphasis on protein, but not a huge focus. If you were a collegiate athlete or an Olympic athlete, I would definitely try and get it closer to that 1.5 grams per kilogram.
So maybe closer to that like 35% of the plate.
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And pregnant women need more protein, children, and then again, that sick people. So anyone who their body is in that state of healing, we definitely need more protein for all the antibodies and whatever growth needs are happening.
Which makes sense because I shove nasty protein drinks down sick people's throats all the time. I feel so bad.
Having worked at a hospital, and this maybe isn't so funny if you haven't worked at a hospital, but I feel like the nutritional band-aid for every sick person is Boost or Ensure. Here's some Boost, here's some Ensure.
Yeah.
That'll solve all your problems, but the reason why is because sick people need more protein.
Yep. Is there anybody that needs less protein than what is recommended?
Great question. Yes. So people with chronic kidney disease. So our protein gets metabolized and our kidney helps filter out the basically like the byproducts of our metabolism, the nitrate that is from our protein metabolism. And if you have a very high protein intake, it can potentially damage or continue damaging your kidneys if you have kidney disease. Because if you have kidney disease, you are already not filtering very well, and so putting a heavier load on kidneys is hard. Or if you have kidney stones too. If you get chronic kidney stones, I actually had a gentleman this week who had recurring kidney stones, and that's part of the dietary recommendations.
Is less protein. Is
a little bit less protein, which specifically when people hear that, it doesn't mean you have to cut out protein. You still need more. You still need protein. So specifically for people with kidney issues, the recommendation is 0.6 grams per kilogram, so just slightly less. With an interesting thing too for people with kidney disease is that plant protein is easier on our kidneys than animal proteins.
That's interesting. Do you know why?
I think it's this idea that their protein sources are not as bioavailable
in meat.
In plant sources. So bioavailable means we're able to digest it and metabolize it and utilize it better, because animal protein is more like our own, so it's more bioavailable. Whereas plant protein, it's not as bioavailable, so we eat it, and some of that protein we don't absorb or we can't metabolize it. And so plant protein, because of that, it's a little bit easier on our kidneys.
So kidney damage, you should eat more plant protein.
Yeah, more plant protein. You don't need to go vegan or vegetarian, but having more plant foods is going to be good.
Very interesting.
And another thing to note too with bioavailability that I think is super intriguing is there is a black market for breast milk, for human breast milk.
What?
Have you heard of that? Or
wait, so plant protein is more bioavailable?
No, opposite. So animal protein is more bioavailable because its chemical makeup is more like our own, so we can better utilize it better than plant protein.
Yes.
So that same idea translates to breast milk, that because it's from a human, it's super similar.
Like exactly what we need.
Yeah, to our chemical makeup, and so we're able to really utilize all of that protein. And so there is
bodybuilders buy that.
Yeah,
right?
Bodybuilders will buy it and make it. So if you have lots of extra
breast
milk, or no, they don't make it, but they make it into protein drinks. But to comment from a USDA standpoint, it obviously is not recommended because we just worry about just how it's stored. And
you don't know how those people got their breast milk out or what they put it in or if they put anything in it or...
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure... I don't know. I just think be careful. Be careful if you're drinking other people's breast milk.
Know the person, I guess. Maybe that makes it more weird, though.
But
that would definitely make it more weird.
It is expensive, obviously.
Have you looked?
Did
you look?
Someone was telling me that during the hurricanes recently that she had a bunch of breast milk that she had to give away in her freezer. So she gave like a freezer full of breast milk away because they were going to have a power outage. So she had to give it away so it wouldn't get ruined.
Who was she giving it away to, like other mothers, or she's like
she
posted
just
on
put
Facebook?
It out on Facebook Marketplace, and
goodness.
then some lady came and took it, and she was
started selling it.
No, she just said.
Sorry, I'll let you tell the story.
She said this is probably like $1,000 worth of breast milk. So thank you. She said thank you. But I was thinking, well, what is she using it for?
Yeah.
They do, which to also say, if you do have extra breast milk, instead of selling it on Facebook Marketplace, another very worthy donation, there are donor breast milk that you can donate to a breast milk bank, and we use that in the NICU. And it's pasteurized, so they make sure that it's safe for the babies, and we give that to all babies if for at least for their first week of life, if moms are able to pump, or for whatever the reason is. So, anyways, random tangent on on breast milk.
Fun. Okay, so my next question is, what happens if you don't get enough protein? So for those that like have kidney disease and maybe take it a little bit too far or something, what happens if you don't have enough? We talked about kwashiorkors.
Yeah, we've talked about kwashiorkor, so that fluid imbalance. So we'll see that. I'll see, like, in the States, I'll also see that with my patients who have really bad liver disease or cirrhosis. So your liver is your major source of metabolism, and it also impacts your fluid balance because of this protein. And so a lot of times when people come in, if they haven't been feeling well and they haven't been eating well, and most likely are deficient in protein, they'll have something called anasarca, which is a lot of swelling in their, like, fluid retention in their abdominal region that they have to, like, remove. So we'll see, a lot of those fluid shifts. And then the other biggest thing is that we start to see muscle wasting. And as dietitians, as a clinical dietitian, we do what's called nutrition-focused physical exams, where we can actually go in and we'll touch at the part, like your temples and then the back of your shoulder and your collarbone. And regardless of your weight, so even someone who's in a bigger body, if they haven't been eating very well, I will feel this muscle wasting where I will feel more like bone or softer tissue and less muscle mass. And so we do see a lot of this muscle wasting and lean tissue wasting.
That's sad because your body's just cannibalizing your own protein to survive,
If
basically.
you're not getting enough, it's going to take it from somewhere. Yep.
Dang. That's kind of cool, though. I remember you doing muscle wasting to me when you had, like, kind of first met me, and I was still in school, and I wasn't eating very well. I remember you feeling my temples and being like, Spencer, you might have muscle wasting. And I've thought about it ever since. So, what happens if you get too much protein? I already know about kidney damage, but what else is there?
Right. So risk for kidney stones and kidney damage if you're eating, and it is like a lot of protein. It's really hard. For anyone who has tried to eat that much protein, we all know that it is a lot. But an interesting thing, it's something called rabbit starvation. This is if you're only getting protein. So no sources of carbohydrates, no sources of fats.
This happened to, like, trappers in the Wild West days, right?
They found it in trappers. It was first identified, like, clear back in the Roman Empire with soldiers. And they call it rabbit starvation because rabbits are leaner, so, like, mostly protein, not a lot of fat. And that's all they would eat because that was all that was available. And then they were dying, even though that they had full bellies and were well fed, maybe eating like 3 meals of rabbit meat, but because they didn't have that balance, their body wasn't able to function. And there's so many different metabolic processes that require all of the nutrients, and so those stopped and then ultimately led to starvation, or they died.
Yikes. And then again, kidney disease. If you have too much protein, your kidneys can't handle it. And you are in bad shape.
But we don't also want to do fear mongering now that no one's gonna
protein.
drink any more protein. Protein's important, and I would say again, it's really hard to get too much of protein. If you do have kidney disease, make sure you talk to your doctor and confirm that.
Yeah.
And no, it's called your GFR, your glomerular filtration rate. You take it in a CMP, a complete metabolic panel blood work. I got mine tested because I was worried about my kidneys, and my GFR is fine. So, anyways.
Indeed. It would be hard to do. Just remember the 10 to 35%. That's actually the most helpful thing for me. 10 to 35%, and you'll be good. Can you talk to us? So you were talking about rabbit protein and how it's lean and stuff. Tell us more about lean protein.
So there are leaner sources of protein, which this is one of the other myths that I wanted to talk about. So there are red meat, so pork and beef, which pork, years ago there was a commercial where they said pork was the other white meat. I think that's maybe something that a lot of us don't know. So pork is considered a red meat. Red meats have higher sources of saturated fat. So from a heart perspective, we may want to focus more on leaner proteins. That's not to say that we can never have red meats. The American Heart Association recommends red meats 1 or 2 times a week, but with this focus on lean proteins. So lean proteins have a lower amount of saturated fat, and lean proteins include chicken, your favorite source.
One of my favorite sources.
And turkey and eggs and dairy products, and fish is a lean protein source, and then all of our plant proteins. So all of our lentils and tofu and edamame and beans and nuts and seeds. So getting a good balance. And I'll also say again, not to create this fear-mongering around red meats. Red meats are an excellent source of iron. And we do need that balance. So just getting a mix, and depending on whatever your gentle nutrition or what your health goals are or what you are needing to maybe to work on or shift towards is how you adjust and create your own balance.
All right. So in summary, Kylie, should protein be on the pedestal?
It should be, but also, with all of the other nutrients, so should carbohydrates, so should fat. So I guess we could say if they're all winners, is no one a winner? Well, I'm a millennial, and I was born in the era where we were all winners, and we all got a ribbon, and we all got prizes. So I think the same can apply to nutrients. So yes, they can all be on that pedestal. So protein can be on it, but it shouldn't be the only nutrition group that we worship and we focus on, but we do need that balance. So in summary, again, that 10 to 35%, making sure you're getting protein and getting a variety, getting more plant protein, getting more lean protein sources, but not forgetting those red meats too to help with iron stores.
Okay, let's jump back really quick to the myths versus facts that we talked about at the very beginning. So does eating more protein necessarily equate to more muscles? What do you think, myth or fact?
I am not sure.
I will tell you, it is
Okay.
false.
Because I was going to say yes, honestly, even though after everything we've talked about, like that's still in my head that if I eat more protein, I'll be able to build more muscles.
I mean, maybe it's like a modified partial false, because definitely you need more protein if you're working out, but if you are just eating protein, it does not necessarily mean that you're going to get jacked. So for the most part, I would say no.
So like the exercise has to amount to equal the amount of protein that you're intaking.
Well, I guess not that. I don't know about equals, but your working out is going to make a bigger impact on your muscle mass than protein.
Okay.
Next myth. Are you healthier for eating more protein?
I would say no now.
False, right? We need balance. We need both protein. We need, like we said, we need to put protein, carbs, and fats on that pedestal. We need a combination of all of those things. Does protein, we didn't really talk about this, which we can here. Does protein help with blood sugars?
I actually haven't really heard that one, so I don't know.
Okay, let's chat about it. That one is actually true. When you combine or pair your food with protein, and actually fiber and fat, it lowers your postprandial or your post-meal blood sugar. So it can help to keep blood sugar stable by adding protein. But again, it all comes back to that pairing, having a balance. It's not just protein, but having a balance in both groups.
So if you're a diabetic weightlifter, then you're in luck.
I guess so. And then does eating more protein help you to lose weight?
like more protein versus like, I guess, carbohydrates is
Yeah.
what most people would say.
Yeah.
I mean, now I know that protein has a lot of calories in it, or it's
caloric.
it's caloric,
Yeah.
so it like doesn't, so it can still get stored as energy.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah, which I
So-
think that's a good thing to understand too. If anything in excess of what you need can get stored as fat. So eating more protein doesn't necessarily equate to we're going to utilize all of that as protein. And so specifically with losing weight, so people who count macros, they have done so many studies about macros and what percentage of macros can help to facilitate better weight loss. And actually the answer is that there is no difference between your macros. However, that if you have a little bit higher protein, a little bit higher fat, within those acceptable macronutrient ranges that we talked about, that that balance can actually help you to feel more full. But in terms of weight loss, that there isn't really any significant difference. So that one would be false.
That also, actually, what you said, that eating protein in excess doesn't necessarily mean it's all going to be utilized as protein. That helps me understand the other myth as well, that eating more protein equals more muscle. Like,
Right.
it's not going
Right.
to just automatically be built into muscle.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I guess that's obvious when I say it out loud, but it makes more sense that way.
Yeah.
So.
Anyways, so there's protein for you. So should it be on a pedestal? Yes, but along with carbohydrates and protein. Oh, I mean fat. And tune in next week and we will be chatting about carbohydrates. If you are listening, we imagine that you are probably on your own health journey. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of this journey. We want to invite you to consider these 3 questions as a weekly personal check-in.
The first question is that maintaining a positive mindset is crucial for success. So, what are your victories and your wins from the past week?
Second question, what are your intentions or focus or goals for this next week? Reminder that the simpler and more realistic, the better.
And the last question is, what are you going to do to accomplish this goal? Be specific, and we invite you to write this down somewhere. What specific things will you do to reach this goal of yours?
Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you are listening to, we would invite you to subscribe. We'd also invite you to leave a review. If you do, you will be entered into our monthly drawing to win a box of meal deliveries. Take a screenshot of your review and send it to Complete Nutrition, complete with a K, completenutrition@gmail.com. You can also check us out online at www.complete-nutrition.com or on Instagram at complete_nutrition.